Okay, good morning. How's everybody? I'm Wood Chipman with Guy Chipman Construction, and I'm doing a presentation today on triage for your historic home. And we have a lot of clients who have older properties and historic homes, and there is always a limited amount of funds to do what we need to do on our houses. And this program is to try and help clients decide what to do first to preserve their investment in their home and what order to do things in to first protect your investment and then second improve it in value and livability as well. Triage is a French word, and it means to shift or sift or separate things in order of importance. And it's used in the medical field a lot. In the MASH 4077, they would triage the patients. They would decide which ones had the most life-threatening conditions, and they would attend to those first. And we need to do the same thing when we're talking about your home. I've always said, if you buy an old property, there's a lot of things that need to be done. Where do you start? You may not want to start with a new kitchen remodel if the roof is leaking into the kitchen, because it's going to destroy all the work that you do. And anyway, so in the priority of repairs, we talk about things that can endanger the life and the safety of the inhabitants and the occupants. In other words, broken glass, balconies that can collapse, things that are in a really bad state where they need to be repaired immediately. Those have to be addressed first. Sometimes structures can collapse. Buildings in San Antonio have been weathered, may not have been put together in the proper way, and over time start to deteriorate. So the next thing you want to work on is things that can endanger the building itself. Knob and tube wiring is really important. We'll look at some pictures of knob and tube wiring further on. It's an old single conductor wire that went through the house with a cloth insulation, and it can be worn by traffic through the house, or rodents can chew on it and expose the wires, and it can cause the house to burn down. So that's a very important thing that needs to be addressed when you're talking about a house, because the last thing you want is a fire. Other issues are things that can cause damage to the house itself. One failure leads to another, like plumbing issues. You might have a slow leaking pipe underneath a commode, but as that water leaks down through the house, it can damage other things, cause mold and other damages in the house. Water itself is one of the most destructive forces we deal with in reconstruction of old houses. So if you have issues like plumbing leaks or porches that leak, those have to be taken care of quickly as well. Another issue is slow-acting concerns like termites, wood ants, and things that get into the house itself and slowly destroy the structure of the house. It's important to take care of those insects and other things that move into the house, such as rodents, possums, coons, and stuff, because their activities can cause further deterioration. Obviously, termites can cause bad problems, but just that rodent being in the house, crossing across those exposed wires, can start the fire. So one thing can lead to the other. Birds, one thing we tell people to watch out for is pigeons, because the pigeon droppings are very dangerous to human life, as we've seen with all these water chillers that have caused infections with people. So you really want to keep pigeons out of your house as well. And then we'll also talk about hail damage and what to look for when a house has hail damage, and also less threatening concerns further on down. So, do you really have to do this to make it look like this? This is a house we worked on, and it was missing a minor thing, and it was missing flashing. And the damage that the water getting into this wall system here, you can see all this rot here extending on down to these windows, and all it was missing is a little piece of flashing over this area here, and an area right there. The tree was, the house was also hit by a tree which caused a little bit of damage. That started the work on it. But you can see when we opened it up, there was quite a bit of damage inside. I'm wondering if I'm running the right presentation here. It's terrible. Let's see. You know, we look at a lot of houses for clients that are looking at buying houses, and some of them look pretty scary. And where do you start? This house is down on East Craig Street in the Tobin Hill district. And, you know, it was once a beautiful house, and it's actually been restored now at this point. The foundation might look okay on that house, but you got to look at the roof too. There was big holes in the roof, and water was coming in through the house and causing damage. There was other issues in the house where bad additions had been done to the house. There's areas that weren't connected properly, and they were causing further damage to the inside of the house. Some projects never got done on this house. There was some posts that never got put in. The guys started a foundation work, and they left the project. The poor homeowner couldn't get them to come back, and they left this underneath the house. And obviously that's not the proper foundation post. You know, this might look like it's in danger of collapse, but this is the porch post, but really this was pretty structurally sound. It was a little bit of deterioration of this wood, but it wasn't like going to cause the whole house to collapse. This was a nice feature a long time ago, and you know, it needed to be addressed pretty quickly because it was dangerous. But this house amazingly had some beautiful treasures inside, some beautiful woodworks, some Corinthian columns, fireplaces and doors. You'd be amazed to find that all those things are inside that old house. Some houses have history, and this is an architect's house in the River Road area, and they asked me to look at it, and I said, well, you know your house burned? And they said, no, we didn't. I said, yeah, it caught on fire at one time. It's been repaired, but they had just bought the house and didn't realize that it had burned in the past. Probably that knob and tube wiring is what caused it to burn. You can see it right here. Those are the knob and tube wires, the separate conductors that run around the house that can cause a real problem. And here's the typical knob and tube. And look, it's come loose. Let's see if my pointer will work. That's the knob right there. This wire right here used to be connected up to there, but somebody walking through the attic or something knocked it loose. And over time, that wire becomes frayed. People add this cellulose insulation. I'm sure it's not completely fireproof, you know, and modern wire has double insulation. There's an inner insulation and two wires connected with an outer insulation that protect it more from rodent damage and traffic. But this wiring went right through the house, and if the wire went through this framing, there would be a little tube or ferrule that goes through the wood that's what they talk about knob and tube. This is the knob here, and the tube would be, let's see if I can, here's some tubes right here. This is another house, and you know, and I said, this is a house down in King William, and I said, for Pete's sake, hire an electrician, you know. These wires should be in a junction box. That box should be covered. You know, if the wires make a spark, it catches this paper insulation right here on fire, the house could burn. You know, and each one of these connections should be in a box by code. And I don't see, well, yeah, there's a little bit of knob and tube wiring. So this is just a jumble of years of additions and wiring in a beautiful old Victorian house on King William Street. You know, and hire a plumber too. This is the same house down on King William. This is in the basement. This is a water heater. And there's the flue right there. And that's pouring out exhaust gas, carbon monoxide. And so the lady was actually living in this house. Luckily, the carbon monoxide wasn't filling the house, but you figure this basement was probably not a very safe place to be, because this flue is completely disconnected and all that carbon monoxide is just dumping into the house. So these are the kind of things that endanger the residents of the house that you want to take care of first and quickly. And I will talk a little bit about a house we worked on in the Tobin Hill area. We were asked to come out and put some screens on for the windows. but there was a little bit of a problem. When we got there, the windows wouldn't work. This window was all rotted. It was starting to deteriorate in here. It couldn't be open, so it wouldn't really do any good to put screens on these windows without being able to open them. And so the house was missing something. It had a little problem, and it was missing flashing. And this flashing right here, this metal, protects the house from water getting into the wall system. And as water gets in behind this board, each horizontal shelf makes a path for water to come in. And as water would get into here, it would start to deteriorate these windows and the framework and all the way down into the window sills and rot out the wood. And you can see here, these are the windows right below there. This sill was completely deteriorated because that water had gotten in up above and run down into the wall cavity and started to deteriorate these sills. And also, over time, that water has an effect on the sashes themselves. All that moisture in that window pocket can cause the window sashes to start falling apart, the paint to peel, and cause a lot more maintenance. All for something that is just a minor addition there of flashing right there on top of the window. This had flashing, but it had gaps in it, and that was letting the water in. There's another window in the same house. This window shows evidence of a little bit of foundation movement. You see, one side's a little higher than the other. And so as this house has moved a little bit, it's made this window out of level. And so their windows tell a story about what else is going on in the house. Same house, this house had a built-in gutter system that went all the way around the house. And it had this beautiful porte cochere, two-story porte cochere, and it had an enormous gutter that went around it up here in the top. And this water damage had gotten into this whole system and was working its way down and destroying all of this framing up in here and causing a lot of expense for the owners. So we had to figure out a way. Here's another similar built-in gutter system. And over time, these are made out of steel and they're soldered together, and water starts to get in past these solder. It rusts out, and the water gets into the framing below and causes all kind of damage. And that's a view from below that one. And you can see how much water had deteriorated in the framing below. This is the other house on King William on the right here. It had the same built-in gutter system where the water was leaking into the overhang, and it had already been repaired once, but they obviously didn't fix the leak because the new plywood was already rotted out, So it's a typical problem we run into on a lot of historic houses here in San Antonio, that built-in gutter system that we see right there. The priority is to stabilize the house, to dry it in, to prevent damage. This is a house down in the Tobin Hill district that we worked with, the clients, and they've made a whole lot of progress. This house is looking beautiful today. They have restored these porches, but we started out by replacing the roof. We reworked the flashing around these dormers to keep the water out of it, and replaced this overhang that was missing, and got it to a stable condition. And they've made more progress since then and worked on the house further. It's a very tall house. It's probably 30 feet high, Johnny. And Johnny was up there working on those overhangs, and it was a tough job, but at least we got them stabilized and allowed them to move on to their next projects, which are window restoration and stuff like that. We talk a lot about hail damage. In San Antonio, we usually get a hailstorm about every 2 or 3 years. And hail, what it does, when the hail hits your house, the hailstones will knock the granules off the shingle roof. They'll expose the tar to ultraviolet light, and that ultraviolet light causes those shingles to deteriorate more quickly. The insurance will pay you to replace your roof if it's gotten hail damage. And some of the houses we've worked in, they've also paid to take off older roofs, to take off shake shingles, which are underneath the asphalt shingles, and redeck the house. And that's a real nice bonus because that's an expensive process, but you really can't put shingles over old shingles or over shake shingles because it's too irregular. The voids in the shake shingles make it damage easier. So the insurance will pay to take off the shingles and replace them. You can see the dents on this vent where the hail has hit it in different spots. In this vent right here, the hail actually broke the rubber flashing and was causing leaks. And you can see this is more pitting caused by just heat and a lack of ventilation in the roof, and sometimes you'll get a little blistering of the shingles, but it's a good idea if you have a hailstorm, call your insurance company, have them come out and take a look at your roof, and there's no charge, they're not going to raise your insurance rates, but it's worth it. If you know that there was hail in the neighborhood, record the date when the hail was, so you know when the hailstorm was, and you know, if you see a bunch of leaves on the ground, you come home and there's green leaves on the ground, that's a good indication that there was a hailstorm when you weren't there. You're like, where did all these leaves come from? They're all green. Well, the hail will knock the leaves right off the trees, knock holes in leaves, and that's another sign. So you don't always have to be there when the hailstorm it happens, but you need to be aware when we do have hail in San Antonio and have your insurance come out. Here's a couple of real obvious signs of a roof leak. You know, plaster that was bubbling, and these are common locations for roof leaks. This is a fireplace. A chimney is a roof penetration, and water and flashing deteriorates around the chimney, and water can go on down into the house. Also, the mortar on chimneys has to be maintained as well. As the mortar pits and deteriorates, water can get into the bricks and run on down into the house. And you can see here, cause and effect. This is a chimney above. There's holes in the mortar here. This cap flashing is probably not the best that it could be, and that water runs right down into there. And also, it's a good idea not to allow your chimneys, vines and other invasive plants to cover your chimneys, because that lets more moisture in and cracks the brick and stuff like that over time. Another important thing that we talk about to protect your house is painting and glazing of the exterior wood. Wood windows have to be maintained, and when they're not, they start to come apart. And you can see right here, as this is the glazing compound that Victor was talking about just a little while ago on the windows. And as this glazing compound falls out, moisture gets into this window sash, and then the paint starts to peel, the sash starts to bow, and then later on, these joints start to separate, and eventually this window drops. And you can see right here, there's about a 1/4 inch gap where that window has dropped down, the glass has slid out of place, and it's causing the whole system to fail. So it's important to maintain the glazing and painting on your window. If you don't maintain the glazing on the outside, before you know it, you're going to be painting on the inside, because that moisture is going to cause the interior paint to start coming off your windows as well. And here's a good look at what cracked glazing looks like. This is letting water into this, and it's causing this rail right here to crack and rot and deteriorate. You want to also watch out for rodents. We talked about that, and this is just a little hole right here, but you could tell the rodents had been running up this drain pipe and into the house. They leave a little bit of a stain on the wall that indicates where they're going, and you can see just a little discoloration right here. So you want to keep them out of the house. Priority repairs, again, issues that endanger the life and safety of the occupants, passerbys, broken glass, dangerous structures. Like I said, occasionally structures do collapse in San Antonio. You want to have them observed by a good contractor or engineer that can tell you if they're safe. You want to take care of issues like faulty wiring, knob and tube wiring, very first. Also, unstable trees. It's a good idea to have an arborist come out if you have some trees next to your house, and have them take a look at it and make sure that the tree is still sound, because we've lost a lot of trees due to the drought. They've been really taxed by this severe wet and dry season. They get dry, and then a lot of rain, they grow and they get overweighted and start to want to collapse, and you want to make sure they're not going to fall in the house. You also want to look at other issues where one problem can cause another, like water leaks that can cause mold within a structure. You want to make sure any plumbing leak is taken care of quickly, and also roof leaks are taken care of in a timely manner. And porches also can be a source of water leaks into the edge of a house. You want to keep the water out of the framing and other things, other parts of the house. It's important to take care of wood-destroying insects as well. Termites. There's 2 different types of termites that are in San Antonio now. We have the traditional ground termites, and now there's a new Formosa termite, which I think is here in San Antonio, which actually doesn't even go to the ground. And when a house has those, the house has to be tinted, because the treating for the traditional termites, they would inject the chemical in the ground where the termite would get its water, and that would kill the termites. Well, the Formosa termites actually get their water off the roof of the house, and when the dew comes, they don't even have to go to the ground. So there's no way to poison them by spraying poison on the roof of the house. The house has to be tinted. So if you see a house tinted in your neighborhood, you know that it might be a Formosa termite or some type of wood beetle that could infect the whole house, and it's not treatable like a traditional termite. Let's see, again, we talked about animals, birds, pigeons, possums, coons, and all the other things that can move into your house and cause damage, and fleas and all kind of things that you don't want in the house. And we talked a little bit about hail damage and what to look for hail damage. And if y'all have any questions for me, I'll be glad to go over this list with you and help you prioritize where to start on your house and how to protect the investment that's so dear to all of us.